Good thing is we didn't turn the ball over today. Won the turnover battle, tackled pretty well, and we won. So, any other questions?
We'll go ahead and jump into questions then, guys.
No, I'll go ahead. Is that it's today where everybody signs on that dotted line, and every coach in America says that this is the best recruiting class they ever had, and there's never been any bad ones and so forth. And our coaching staff is that we're pleased with what work we put in, and the young men that have decided to come here and be here at the University of Minnesota. I feel like that we fulfill needs. We know a lot about our people that we recruited. We didn't take anybody that didn't go through a thorough evaluation that we didn't visibly see, and certainly check their character out and all the things you need to do, and actually seen by several different people on our staff, so we wouldn't make any mistakes. So we feel good about that. It's we had to actually turn a player away today that was a very good player, but we were filled up, and that's the first time that's happened, in a particular position that went to another power conference school. So that was hard, but again, we were filled up in some positions. So, but we addressed our needs. We needed to do a great job in recruiting in the offensive line, and one of the young men are on campus right now, Tyler Moore, and I think anybody you talk to on our team right now will tell you he is a very aggressive, tough, mean individual. He brings the mentality that you certainly want, and I think this whole group is that type of kid. So we fulfilled needs there, and then certainly in the secondary, we're going to have a great secondary this coming year. But with that, we lose some critical players next year. So we brought in this class to help take care of those needs that we need, and so those two needs were very important. And then we filled in with the rest of the team that we needed to add additions. And I think I'll certainly answer any questions on the rest of the group. But those were two big needs in the class. And then we continued to increase our skill, which we needed to do. And one thing about it, from the D line to the offensive line to the receivers to the D backs, they all can run and they're all athletic. And that's what we try to get all the time. Some of them we're going to have to, put some strength on and build in the weight room. But, we've done that with a lot of players. We got certainly two guys that are going to get drafted this year that grew into where they're at. So Coach Klein does a great job of developing people. We give him length and speed, and the rest takes care of itself. And I think we proved that over the last couple of years with the recruiting classes we've had. We played 8 freshmen last year, and a lot of people talk about, and boy, the Gophers, their coaches do a great job in this. We got good players. I don't think people really understand that. We had better players than a lot of people we played this past year, because I've never seen Coach Kill or Coach Clays, Coach Limegover ever make a tackle, never break up a pass, and we're not the ones that make the plays. And so I think sometimes people don't appreciate the players we got on our team, that we got good players, and I think we certainly recruited some. So with that, I'll take on any questions.
Did you think winning eight wins 2 years in a row, did that elevate your class and get you, can you tell you're in the homes of better players than you used to be?
I think that it certainly, what it did more than anything is, if you're recruiting, when you go out and recruit, there's just a lot more people talking about it, and certainly in the high school coaching ranks, and you always can tell your coaches are getting, offers to speak all over the country, and so you're getting some respect, and then you're getting into some high schools that you normally wouldn't get into, and maybe you didn't get a kid this year, but you certainly set the groundwork to get one next year, and then some we got that we wouldn't normally get. So I think the exposure it certainly helps us, and winning solves a lot of problems. But I don't think there's any question. I think the next step for us is, again, I keep saying it, but the new facility, you can talk about it, but until you see it, and we're still in that competition mode when we're recruiting against the power conference schools and the very good, those schools that they want to see, they compare you. And so we still battle that one a little bit, even though we're winning, we still battle that a little bit. But, again, it certainly has helped.
Jerry, can you describe when Demery Croft was at your camp, kind of what the coaching staff saw, and then just like getting a commitment from him soon after, what that meant to you guys?
Well, I think, I said that's the you talk about draft and things of that nature, and you really kind of go, now, wait a minute here, how's this happened to where, nobody really knew a lot at that particular time. But a lot of all this recruiting, sometimes people offer everything so early, then they're filled up. And then this guy played receiver as a junior, and then about halfway through, the guy got hurt and he went to quarterback, and then the rest is he just kept excelling. And so I don't think people really, they were done in some of that junior, certainly with a quarterback. But when he came to camp, we didn't know that much. But when he came to camp, and of course, like anything, we put him on the clock and run him, and he runs 4.6, 4.6 flat, and our coaches think they're in the NFL when they're timing. So that's a tough time for a kid to make. And then when he started throwing the ball, throwing routes, you go, oh, man, this kid's different. And so we're fortunate enough to, I think he felt good because we're the first ones to jump out at that time. And then after that, he had people call, but he stayed in there with the commitment. And then he went down to the All-Star game, and I don't know, he was 14 for 17, something like that. And and he's an athletic kid. He's like it, and very calm and cool, and doesn't get really rattled too much. So I think he's got all the tools, and you can't turn down somebody that athletic. And so to me, he's kind of a steal, so to speak, because I think in a different time, different situation, it would have been tough for us to get him.
Hey, Jerry, secondary's been the biggest, I think, upgrade with this program since you guys got here. Is that just the vision that you and Clays and Sawville have in terms of the type of athlete that you want back there?
Yeah, I tell you what, and just talking on our defensive guys, Coach Clays, Coach Sawville, Coach Phelps, and Coach Sherrills, they know exactly what they want. I mean, they to the T, and that's got to get through 4 bullheaded people in that room, and then me. But they know exactly what they want in the secondary and what they want at corner. And as you look through this, is we always want a couple corners with length. And we did that. We want a safety like Demarius Travis, and we got with Dior Johnson. That's who he is, and we want guys to be able to change directions, lose hips, and then we'll take a 5'9", 5'10" corner that can really run. And the corners, the 2 smaller corners on here, Antonio Chenault, and then I know a lot about Keontae Harden. Is those 2 guys can really run. And so, and they're physical, but they've got kind of a certain premium on what they want. And that's what we did with the kids that we got now. So there's no question, our guys, this is what we want. And then some guys, I mean, there's a guy that we had up here that we decided as it goes, and we got commitments, and he was at Nebraska, and then he flipped from Nebraska, and he flipped somewhere else. But, we had some other good players that had came up here, but, it's one of those things you can't offer them all. And, these were the guys that, from being smart has something to do with it too. You don't want smart people. And, the kids that we have now put a pretty good standard on that. But we feel this group is the next group. And the good thing about where we're at now, the secondary guys that we have are good. It's a good culture, and these kids come into a good culture, and they get a chance to learn from some guys that, are very good. I mean, we may have in that deal back there in the secondary right now, 3 or 4 guys that'll be all conference next year, or be some sort of all conference, and there may be 2 or 3 of them get drafted. So this is a good group to come in and learn from those guys.
Have had a lot of success bringing JUCO, junior college guys in, especially defensively. Is Ace Rogers a guy that you see being able to make immediate impact, kind of along the lines of some of your other guys in the past?
Well, again, a junior college player takes a little bit, but he's played at the highest level. And then coming here, we knew about him. We tried to get him committed the first time, and but he's again a guy that's big, lengthy, and I think he'll be a guy that he can get in the box and play nickel. He can play deep safety, a lot like Demarius. And so there's no question with all the people that we play that you got to play 6 DBs against. That that's why you got to have that depth. And really, when you look at the way people are playing, that nickel almost got to be a linebacker. You know what I'm saying? According to who you're playing, and you get that guy in the box. So that's where you want those guys. Like Dior and him. 6'2", 6'1". 210 pounds, like Demarius. Demarius is a very, very good football player. And that's what you try to get. The tough thing in recruiting, you got to gauge, and you got to have one as good as that coming in or better. And that's not that easy when you're getting better players. But we feel like this is a good crop that we have. And then we'll go get, probably another corner or two and a safety or two next year.
Could any of the offensive linemen come in and play right away or even start?
Offensive line is the hardest place to come in and play, because all the learning that takes place. But, it certainly could be a possibility with some of the kids, and certainly a young man like, Tyler Moore that's here already. That will help because he'll go through the spring. But I think certainly they'll add some depth, and there may be a couple of them that will have to play. Maybe not start, that will have to play. And, that's a group that is big. It's as big as group as we recruited and as athletic a group as we recruited. So usually we've had to put the weight on them. And in this case, and they're lean. They're not sloppy. Quinn Oslin is a huge man, and he's not sloppy at all. So that they'll pass a look test, I can tell you that, when they come to camp.
Their size, just looking on paper, these guys look like they're college size already. Is that unusual, or is that kind of the trend because the strength training is so prevalent now in high schools? Are they coming in bigger than they used to 5 years ago?
I think they are. I think for us, we haven't been able to recruit that type of kid. We've had to recruit and build them. This year we've been able to jump in on some kids maybe we wouldn't normally get, and they are getting bigger and stronger. However, it's hard to find those guys that are athletes, that can move and quickness and so forth. Certainly this big. Usually they're a little bit lighter, and then you develop it. But, I do think kids are getting bigger and stronger. I don't think there's any question about that. And, we got some guys, one of them's a pretty good basketball player, that done some different things. But, this, like I said, this class, when they come in, they'll be big, but they won't look, they're, a lot, I guess, you can compare it to is, arguably Wisconsin's had as good as offensive line in the Big Ten, and these guys are size-wise like what they have.
Dior Johnson didn't commit till within the last week. What's that process like as a coach when there's still a guy or two that you're trying to maybe get to commit in that last week or a couple days? What's that like?
Well, it's not easy, and it's one of those things where, with Ray Buford being committed, and we'd been down there and knew Ray and his family, and Dior is close to Ray, and but we had him come up for a visit and got in his home, and not certainly not easy to get a kid to say, hey, I want to do this instead. And actually, I left his home, didn't know what was going to happen, and I was on the runway, literally on a, in this case, a private plane on the runway, and we're going down the runway, and I get a call and he commits. So I had to tell the guy, keep her down right now, don't get in the air on us. And that's true. That's a true story. So he committed on the runway.
Jerry, how do you get a kid out of El Paso?
Pat Poor's crazy. Pat used to coach in Texas, and he goes all over the place. And again, we have to, a lot of times, a lot of people don't know a lot about what we do, is that we have to go out and hunt and so forth. And and talking to somebody in a high school, as you say, getting in some high schools you normally don't get to, and they're talking and say, hey, there's a kid out there in El Paso a lot of people don't know about, and he said, you need to go take a look at him. He said, number one, he's a heck of a basketball player, he's a heck of an athlete, and he's a steal. And then another guy that we knew that sent us, a guy named Martell Moore, that was a great receiver at Northern Illinois, had seen this kid play too, and said, you better get out there, because sooner or later somebody's going to give him a call. And actually after he committed to us, Nebraska had given him a call. But we just, word of mouth, and and I'm kind of like you go, that kid ain't going to come this far to Minnesota. And but Pat did a good job, and we got him up here. And that's another thing, we're very, the guys we redshirted right now are just, in some ways you wish you would have played them a year ago, but now I'm glad we didn't. But they're going to be outstanding. And then we add 6'2", 6'5", 6'4", 6'6", whatever they're tall, and 200-pound kids. We're going to be big at receiver. So I always say, if I think Nick Saban said that small players get tired and they're still small, big players get tired and they're still big. So we'll have some big receivers that still be big when they get tired, and we're still, I think that group we need to add, again, continue to add skill to that group. So it'll be the most overall offensively, it'll be the most skilled players that we've had since we've been here, and a running back too. That's going to be a war zone on that deal. So we got some players in that group.
You were saying earlier that offensive line and defensive back are kind of the big focuses of this class. Do you kind of have an idea of what areas you need to focus on for next year's class, like what groups?
You're already working me. It's supposed to be, holy cow. That's good thinking. You got to start 27. You got to start farther back than that. I think we offered one today, clear back as a sophomore. I think that's crazy, but we did it. But it's next year, defensive line, we'll need to, we need to really, you watch Missouri play, and defensive end wise, everybody's looking for something like that. So we gotta find, one or two of those guys next year. I think that's really important. And then add a couple more, 3 or 4 guys in the secondary, pick up a couple linebackers, and I'd say that where we'd be at defensively. From an offensive standpoint, again, I think we talked about 3 offensive linemen to continue to get those classes bounced, 3 or 4. Probably a couple tight ends, take 2 receivers. Probably about, right in there. So kind of recruiting a team, so to speak. And we're still not done yet. I'm always save a couple, to see what happens. And we may take a transfer or 2. We'll see. But we're still working a little bit.
Coach, you talk about the speed of recruiting and recruiting younger guys and the number of offers that are out there and the decommitments as part of the process. How do you look at the landscape of recruiting now, and are there changes or things that you'd like to see done to?
I think everybody wants to see early signing day, because if that was the case, you can kind of clear things up, and then you'd stop some of the decommitting stuff. That's my opinion. And then to give you an idea, I don't know if anybody remembers Nate Andrews. I mean, he was coming to our school. I mean, we had him, and 4 days before signing date, Florida State comes in there and offers him, and he goes to Florida State. If we had early signing date, he would have signed, wouldn't have gone to Florida State, and look what kind of player he is right now. He's a great player. So that's where then kids are going to, if they really truly going to commit, then they'll have to commit. If they're not, then, but at least it kind of clears the picture up for everybody. And my personal opinion, you'd like to have it in August, and certainly a school like us where we could have some visits during the summer, because that hurts us. All these other people can have the non-officials, but they're really officials. They just can't feed them, and that hurts us because of our area location. But I think in the scheme of things, I think they'll go to December. And I'll probably find out here in about 5 or 6 days what the thought process is. But I think it may be about the time of, junior college, when you sign junior college players. But then it may not change either, It's not really up to us. I mean, it's up to the grand scheme of college football. But that would eliminate some of that. And I think you guys understand that setting out there.
A guy like Nate Andrews, your staff has kind of developed a reputation of kind of finding guys first, and a lot of times when that Minnesota offer goes out, you see other schools kind of swoop in later. Do you get kind of concerned with that and try to limit how much information gets out there on the guys?
Well, in this day and age, you're not going to limit anything in this, because of that. And I think the thing about it is, I think with the way we recruit, because again, we can't select. We have to recruit. Ohio State knows, and believe me, they got good players now. I mean, they got great players. They won a national championship. But, they can pretty much select. We got to go out and recruit and find people and build them in the weight room. And that's what we do. I do think people respect that in what we're doing. We've never had a high rank. We had guys drafted in Northern Illinois. We pretty much take kids that we feel like that are going to fit what we do and develop them. And like I said, I mean, I think you'd all agree, we got good players. We wouldn't have beat the people we did. But I think we do a good job. As you're talking about the defensive staff, we take what we feel like is going to fit with us. And, and does that happen now a little bit more, that when we're recruiting a kid, here comes somebody. Something we may get on him right off the bat, and then all of a sudden, there's people at Arkansas I know. And like Colton Beebe is a kid that played, I'm getting so old, his daddy played my first year at Pittsburgh State. Well, Sam Pittman was there at Pittsburgh State at that time. He's at Arkansas. He's offensive line coach. Well, with that being said, is that as soon as we started talking about it, then Arkansas got involved, and Sam's a very good recruiter. And to this time, Sam wished he could have got the rest of those guys on board with this kid. And but I think there is some respect. I think probably you learn about that. Tom Lemming's a guy that really kind of started all the recruiting rankings and ratings and so forth. And, he voted Billy and is one of the, I don't know what, top 5 guys in recruiting. And he said they did that because of where we're at and how hard it is to recruit. Sometimes where we're at in Relevant and Nick Saban at Alabama, it's different. And so I think the people out there respect what we're doing and how we're doing it here. And I think, they go, where'd Eric Murray come from? We didn't hear about him, but I don't think anybody heard about that kid from West Alabama either. He just won the Super Bowl, So sometimes it's, you got to do your research and you got to recruit to what you need. And by the way, the Patriots do a pretty good job of that, and Seahawks do too, because I don't think there was a 5-star player in that game. And is that correct? And I don't think there's very many 4-star players in that game. So,
what's the program's policy on decommitments the other way when someone has committed to a school and you guys are in the mix?
Well, until they have an early signing date, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's not gonna, it's different now, because you've got people moving hats and it's on national TV and people want that big, spill, and, that's what it's become to. It's come to a lot of money, having all that publicized and so forth. And, sometimes people get overhyped and you never hear from them. Some or live up to it, but as far as commit and decommitment, shoot, I don't know how many times, even in the Big Ten, and, it flip-flop. I think the kid from Iowa, there's a running back, and I think there's nothing you can do about it, and everybody's competing, trying to keep their job. And but I think until they have an early signing date, you're going to see that, because then it's a little harder to do that. But it's hard. It's hard to set in here. I don't think, we're all worn out. And, then I gotta go do something tomorrow and Big Ten meetings, and then you're already started. Our guys were in there today. We're watching junior film. Which one of these offensive linemen, what do we think here? and there's a lot of good players. You know, next year will be one of the better years in Minnesota since we had Max and all that group. There's some players, you know, in Minnesota. So you got to find out, you know, before everybody else comes in, to make sure you do your job. So, but that's kind of long answer to the question, but.
How did the process go in state? And you were just saying that you see a lot of good recruits coming out in this state.
Yeah, and you know, next year, and I think, you know, we've been recruiting again. We recruit out, and you know, there's a lot of good players, and there's a lot of guys that you know, there was, you know, as far as power conference players, I think there's more next year. I think this year you can look and see what happened. You know, I think we had 4 that went to power conferences. Is that correct? I don't know where I'm looking at here, but 1 went to Oregon, 1 went to Ohio State, and 2 went to us. So, and I think it was next year, again, I can't say right off the hand, but there's going to be quite a few more than that. I think our second year here, I don't know, it's 10 or 12, somewhere in there. So, you know, it varies from year to year, but it does in Iowa, it does in Wisconsin, you know, because we're not as populated, you know, and there's Texas and Florida are huge populations. So the more people, sometimes the more players, but there's a lot of talented players in Minnesota. We're playing with a lot of them. You know, I think there's a very good possibility 4 out of 5 offensive linemen next year will be from Minnesota. So we got to make sure we keep the good ones in state. I look at it this way. A lot of people talk about that. We lost 1 to Oregon. We lost 1 to Ohio State. With that being said, since I've been here, is that the border schools, we haven't played against anybody that's playing right now at Iowa, and we haven't played against anybody in Wisconsin that's playing except the Martz kid, Tyler, but that was my first year here, and he'd already committed to Wisconsin before I took the job. So you know, we're trying to lock down those states, and to this point, we've done a pretty good job. And if you look through the Big Ten, you know, we haven't seen, you know, I don't think we lost a lot of people, but you know, Ohio State, I mean, they won the national championship, and it's hard, you know, it is what it is, and they do a good job. I mean, nobody can't say they don't, and we certainly lost 1 there. But for the most part, through recruiting, we've done a pretty good job. Now we've lost some to schools that we're not going to play right now. Hopefully we'll get to playing, but you know, right now we haven't, and you know, they've been some good players.
How do you feel about what you've done at receiver the last 2 years? You look at the Gentry group and then Still and Register this year?
Well, I'll give you an idea right now is that Desmond Gant, nobody recruited. Nobody. And I got it in from a guy that actually went to University of Michigan, Kurt Becker. He calls me and said, hey, this kid's a freak. And he said, I got my first year coaching job here. He's raw and all that. Well, I think Desmond, 5 days ago when he got tested 40-inch vertical jump. And he's, you know, 218 pounds at 6'3". And, you know, that's big time. Isaiah Gentry, you know, he's a 4'4" something, and he's long, and he got his knee fixed, and he's healed up, you know, and I call him, you know, then you got a couple of them. Who else is? I call him Gunpowder, but is Melvin Holland is another one that's very, very athletic, and so, and then Jerry Gibson, what's happened to him? He's leaned up, and you know, he's a guy. He's a 4'6" guy, 36-inch vertical jump. So those are 4 guys, and Jerry may play receiver because of his ability. And then these 2 big guys are, you know, the kid from Dutchtown, a heck of a basketball. Well, they both are. They're both basketball players at 6'5" and 200 pounds. So, and they're very athletic. So that class is, you know, continues to get better. And that's important to us. As I think Rick Neuheisel on the radio show I was on today, after I got done interviewing him, he was talking and didn't know I was listening actually as it went through the deal. And he said, hey, I'll tell you what, I got a lot of respect for what they're doing up there. And he said they're going to be really good. And he said if they get some people to take the top off the coverage, and I feel like we got people that can take the top off the coverage, and it's a lot easier to hit a target 6'5", 6'6". So.
Alonzo Creighton's a guy that didn't get a lot of attention from major programs. What do you guys see from him? I know he's pretty lengthy for being a corner.
That right there, length and speed, length and speed. And it's just like what you hear in the media and so forth. A lot of times, just like if we get one committed and other people kind of come in and nibble around, you don't really ever hear about that sometimes. Some coaches cut things off immediately. They say, hey, they're done. Then others, they don't do that. And where he's at, they shut down things pretty quick. And he's physical. He played safety in high school, but he's got the hips we feel like can be both actually. So that's a plus sign. And then that's your DB coach down there, recruiting. You talking about somebody who does a heck of a job in recruiting. Mo, just look at that deal. Mo in the South for a Big Ten school this far north, Coach Sawvell can get after it now. And he's down there. That's who he's recruiting. So again, he knows what he wants, and I think he's proven on what he wants. So and he's got a great reputation, down there, and we've had it since we were at Southern Illinois. So he's done a good job. That big defensive tackle, Big Gary, I call him the Big Easy, is going to be a great player here. And this kid's from his high school. They keep the other one 2 years ago went to South Carolina. Now we got another one from there he's going to be huge too. So it's coach does a good job down in that area, and very well respected in that area.
We have time for two more, so Chip, go ahead.
Yeah, your running back class this year and then last year, it seemed like you have a good mix of styles. Do you look for a blend of styles or?
I think you have to in the Big Ten, and I think you got to have a big back, but you also got to have one that can get it over with. And with Jeff Jones being eligible, and we got a couple guys that can do a lot of things, but with Jeff Jones being eligible, and everybody forgets about is Rodney Smith. If you come to practice, Rodney Smith is a very, very good back, and a lot of people, don't. And then Jonathan Femi Cole, I'd encourage you to go watch his YouTube, and but he's got getaway speed at 218 pounds, and I think I'd encourage you to go look at that. I mean, he's from Canada, and a lot of people, he'll be a little bit raw, but you don't find anybody that look like that and can run. And then Shannon Brooks, we had to go up into the mountains to get him in Georgia. There's great players in Georgia, South Georgia through there that you have to drive. We left the airport, got off the deal with Coach Anderson. It was a 2.5-hour drive. I go, hey, wait, I didn't know there was that many mountains in Georgia. And his house sits on top of the mountain up there. And shoot, you have to work to find him. But again, watch his video. He's a tremendous player. And then I think we all know, you get into recruiting, and you're recruiting running backs and so forth, and then you go up to North Dakota, and it seems like every time the Gophers have gotten a player from that area, they've been All-American, or there's been some great players, and I think that getting anybody that's with James Johannesson of being 6'1" and 220 pounds, and he ran 4.55 at our camp. And again, a lot of people don't know all that stuff, so he came to camp, and, if you go through the bloodline of Minnesota from that place, there's been, one of them's an Outland Trophy guy up there. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure that's correct. So we maybe need to take one or two every year if you can find them, and he rushed for about 6,000 yards, something like that. I mean, he was, and he can do a lot of things too, so a good mixture, and then that's not counting the ones we got. Berkeley Edwards is, doing through spring ball, also running track, and then, again, sometimes we forget about Roderick Williams, who in the bowl game busted up in there. So we always talk about having competition and at positions, and competitions makes you, it makes you better. So we're going to have a lot of competition, a lot of places.
Coach, you mentioned just the money involved in football recruiting. I guess Minnesota is 14th in the country over the last 5 years in terms of money spent on football recruiting. Is that what it takes to stay competitive, the spending, and then where does all that money go exactly?
Help me out on that. That's a big good negotiation when I go see Norwood.
USA Today report, 14th, Minnesota's 14th in the country over the last 5 years in football recruiting spending, 2.7 million.
I don't know. I don't think that's right, but is most of it that is spent in recruiting is, and again, a lot of those things on budget are not, how much is really truly spent on recruiting. But I'd say most of the stuff in recruiting for us is the travel part, because we're so, we're up so far up north. And I mean, there's a lot of money when you're getting on a plane and, you got 10 coaches going all over the country. It's not like Texas. TCU can recruit within a 2-hour radius and be home at night. Here you got to work at it. And so with that being said, the plane flights cost you. Adam's sitting there. He's our ops guy. The plane flights probably cost the most, isn't it? And the biggest part of it, I'd say. And part of that just the way things keep going. You got official visits. Next year you're going to be able to pay for the parents. I mean, it's a lot of money. Now you can have 3 training tables, and as I've told you, it isn't going to get any cheaper to run a college football program. It's going to keep rising, and you're going to have to keep up with everybody to do it. But I think a lot of it has to do, with the location you're in, and we're so far north. But I thought you meant 14th conference, and I didn't believe that.